to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melisa Caprio.
Hello and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melisa, creating the life you crave. How's everybody doing? I hope you guys are all faring well. Today I have author, speaker, podcast host Mark Bradford with me, and he's going to join me in just a few moments. A few things that I want to bring up. I'm in Florida, so I am calling from Florida. So if I'm a little spotty in and out, we are having, because of the storm, we're having some network issues. So hopefully you guys can hear me. And when Mark comes on, he's going to do most of the talking anyway. So we're going to hear what he has to say. Last week, I was supposed to be here live with my guest, Dr. Alan Weiser, and I've rescheduled him for after the new year. We had to run a replay because, as many of you know, probably most of you know, Florida was hit with a hurricane. Luckily, where I live, we fared well, but many in other parts of the state were not so lucky, so please send well wishes to those who were hit directly. And that brings me to something I've been thinking about, and something actually a psychic said to me, which confirmed what I had already been thinking about. It is to be careful of how we speak about hurricanes, hurricane season, and natural disasters. I've lived in Florida pretty much my whole life, and I am no stranger to tropical storms and hurricanes. But I have noticed over the past so many years that the storms have grown in size and ferocity, and it isn't a coincidence that as soon as a system comes off the coast of Africa and begins its travels, the news and weather people start talking about it incessantly. And the closer it comes to hitting a coastline, the more they talk about it 24/7. And they use words like monster, catastrophic, the most powerful storm of the century, and it will leave death and destruction in its wake. And you can see and feel their excitement because it gives them a reason to incessantly talk about it, and it scares people. And they keep feeding that energy. In my personal opinion, I believe, at least here in Florida, that they almost seem disappointed when we don't get a storm during hurricane season. And that's troubling, actually. I talk about manifestation and the power of bringing into our life what we focus on. And that is what law of attraction and manifestation is. What we put our thoughts, words, and energy on will manifest into our reality. So if we are collectively focusing on nothing but a storm, and it is so far off to say that we were also feeding energy into that storm by constantly thinking, talking about, focusing on the devastation. By using words like catastrophic and monster and storm of the century, we could unknowingly be adding to its power. Now, I'm not saying don't be informed or prepared. And if you have to evacuate, you definitely should. Please, if they tell you it's mandatory evacuation, evacuate. You must keep yourself, your family, and your pets safe. That is first priority. And we must be prepared, but we can certainly start imagining a different and safer reality collectively. I'm just throwing it out there that possibly we should start seeing the words we use and thoughts we think about these storms and natural disasters and start collectively putting out there what we want when a system forms instead of what we fear by focusing on its destruction. And maybe we can start giving these storms innocuous and funny names like Hurricane Buttercup or Tropical Storm Bubbles to change its energy. A name is a very powerful thing. I am no longer focusing on hurricane season, and I am now stopping calling this time of year hurricane season. Possibly, if we all do that, we can help manifest a different, calmer, and safer reality. So those are just some of my thoughts on the storm, and I'm sending my prayers to those on the West Coast who were hit terribly hard by this storm. That is the reality right now. Okay, so for those of you who listen to my show all the time, welcome back. And for those of you who are new tuning into my show, a little about me. I'm an author, a photographer, and my book is titled Postcards to the Universe: Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And in my book, there are 30 manifesting stories along with photographs that I took of the contributors' manifesting postcards. I include writing exercises, and it helps us get clear on what we want to manifest. We want to manifest good stuff, right? And a toolbox full of exercises on how to bring in love, money, health, career, and much more. So if you're interested in learning more and doing inner work exercises and reading people's incredible journeys of transformation, inspiration, and manifesting, you can find my book on your favorite bookstore and please purchase a copy. And I'm also asking people to keep sending me manifesting postcards. I talk about how to create one on my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com. And if you're on Facebook, join me over at my Facebook page, Postcards of Love. Okay, so next week I have Ulrika Sullivan. She's a certified life coach, yoga teacher, energy healer, podcast host, and author. And in her book titled Wisdom Beyond What You Know: How to Shift from Being Driven by the Mind to Living from the Heart and Intuition, she presents 7 inner shifts for heart-centered living. And her passion is to help busy working women reconnect with their inner calm and life balance. But that's next week's show, so join us there. But today I'm excited to talk to my guest, Mark Bradford. He's an author, speaker, podcast host, coach, and builder. He's built a dating site from scratch, written productivity books, including one on spirituality and how humans connect and relationships work. He shares his knowledge on dating and the secrets dating sites don't want you to know. He shares what one emotion is the most powerful, and surprisingly, it's not love. His podcast interviews, as well as his experience, has taught him time management, tricks, multitasking, and how both order and chaos can benefit our lives. And he believes life is made of 3 important things: time, energy, and resources. And it's in his nature to build things that fix, augment, or create a solution. In his vast experience, he's authored 7 books, created a dating site, and a card game on dating and relationships. You can find Mark speaking to professional associations, groups, and businesses on a regular basis. And for more information, you can go to his website. That's markbradford.org. Mark, M-A-R-K, Bradford, BRADFORD.org. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for being here with me today.
Well, that's quite a mouthful. Hello, Melissa. So nice to. It's so nice to sort of be here, and it's nice that you also have made it through hurricane bubbles. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm helping. And and the reason, and I have to say the reason that the news frame things in that way is because there's 2 powerful things people use to get you to click on things and listen, and that's fear and anger. If they can make you afraid, and if they can make you angry, then you're going to be interested. But if they say, hey, this nice thing happened, then everyone turns it off.
Exactly. And I know that to be true, but since I do talk about the manifesting and this started to like stir in my mind the last couple of years. And I'm like, you know what? If we're all focusing on it, and the names, I think it's funny that giving it such an innocuous, funny name could shift the energy. I'm just saying, I'm no expert, but I'm just throwing it out there. Why not? If we could all be safer, that would be better. But right now, I want to talk about you, and I'm excited to have you on because I haven't done, in all the years of radio, I haven't done anything from focusing on. I'm excited to find out about what made you create your dating site and your card game, and what's dating from a male's perspective, because I usually don't have an opportunity to talk to men about it. So why don't we share a little bit about you and your background and how you got to what you're doing today, and then we're going to get into that.
Okay, I will try to be concise. Please hold your laughter. So
Okay.
So a little bit about me is that I'm divorced, and going through my divorce is actually what spurred on so many things. My writing started then, my coaching started then, my podcast started then. And when it comes to the books about relationships and so forth, that all came from a moment, an epiphany moment when I took my kids to a psychologist because there was some crazy stuff going on, and I wanted to make sure they were okay. And me as their guide, I wanted to make sure I wasn't Ben Kenobi making Darth Vader accidentally. So I wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing as well. And so the psychologist said, Mark, they're surprisingly well-adjusted considering what's happening. And she said, you're doing everything you can for them. What are you doing about you? And I just kind of stared at her. I wasn't doing anything for me at all. And that's when I learned and understood, the whole put your mask on first thing, even though it's counterintuitive, the self-care and the self-love. And everyone kind of ignores self-care and self-love because, like so many words, they're used to death and then people start ignoring them. And so that's when I realized that life needs to have balance. And then that's where I came up with the, life is made of three things: time, energy, and resources. And so I do that. I've written books, and actually I'm up to 8 now. I just released another book. So I do that in the podcast. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. The new book is called Three Voices. It's the three ways we communicate with the three languages we use to communicate with ourselves and other people. So it's gotten some really fun feedback from beta readers and some new readers too. So that's where I am. I ended up going on like a gazillion dates because I kept being told by friends that it's a numbers game. So, I was somebody who was just like, okay, let's see, your picture might have been bad lighting, maybe had the wrong impression. We'll just go see. Most of the time, unfortunately, I was proven right that it wasn't bad lighting, but sometimes I was pleasantly surprised. And I mean, everyone's human. So people forget that when it comes to, dating apps and things like that there's a real human being on the other side of it. And people have this assumed anonymity, and then they are just kind of rude and mean. So I went on a lot of dates, learned a lot of things. I was told a lot of times to write a book on things, and everyone's like, oh, I want to write a book on my experiences, but nobody wants to read that. But people wanted me to write a book because I had started to come up with sort of these rules and how things were actually working. So, and that's where the whole Status Game series started to come from.
Okay. So you were talking about your children. Now, were you a single dad? Did you raise your children on your own?
Yes, to both questions. Yeah, I ended up being a single dad and raising both my kids on my own and sort of juggling my consulting business at the same time.
Okay. So that must have, been you must have had some unique challenges doing that. How was that for you?
It was difficult. I was the wrong sex. I mean, to put it bluntly, because everyone assumes the guy is just this knuckle-dragging Cro-Magnon who doesn't understand how to cook and clothe and take care of his children. And so I was actually chased out of dressing room twice, or dressing room areas when I was with my daughter for looking for a prom dress, and she didn't want to keep coming out because, they're at that age where they don't want to, parade around in front of strangers. She's like, Dad, just come into the hallway at least over here, where all the other moms are. Right. And then so I had somebody come up and say, you can't be here. And she just looked at me so oddly. I'm like, that's my daughter. She's the only parent. I'm the only parent she has right now. So I was at a TJ Maxx and the same thing happened. And I got chased away. And the woman said, you're making all the other women nervous. And the funny thing was, there was literally one other woman sitting there, and she came over to me and she tapped my leg and she said, my boyfriend raised his daughter since she was 4. You're not making me nervous at all. So the woman had literally made it up just because she just thought, ooh, a man's in here, that's not right. So I think things are a bit different now. It's more widely accepted and there's more male single parents, but at that time, jeepers, that was difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's why I asked you the question, because you're right. Most people assume it's always the mothers, but it's not always the mothers, and times are changing. So, and I'm sure that raising, and you said, okay, so obviously you have one daughter, raising a daughter must have given you a really interesting perspective on women, and I'm sure that helped a lot with your dating site and what you got out of that. So I do want to focus on talking about that. So when did you create the dating site, and is it still in existence, or was this something that you created and it's no longer available to people who are listening who maybe want to join a dating site?
So I created the dating site after I started dating. So I went on all the major dating sites. I I just went into it. I plunged myself into it. And I realized that they were all backwards. And I was like, well, wait, I think I can make this. So I did a comparison between dating sites in real life, and real life only lost on one thing. Otherwise, real life beat dating sites hands down in every single way of meeting people. And so I went ahead and just built this thing from scratch, and I built it very altruistically. I built it like it was a tool so that you could use it to meet people versus this weird social media mental illness abuse thing that they try to do to you to get you to almost connect with someone and then pay more to almost connect with someone and then just keep you hanging on. And that's actually one of the dirty secrets, which is they actually don't want you to meet the other person. They don't, because it's one of the only products in existence that if it's a useful, successful product, you stop using it. Imagine
like the health
that,
industry, right? They don't want you to get well because then you don't need to. There's money in being sick. But I want to get into that, and I didn't get a chance to tell you, Mark, because we were like trying to get connected today. But we do take 2 breaks, so this is our first break. So we're going to take our first commercial break here, and then we're going to get into it when we come back. Stay tuned, everybody.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
The rainbow is God's promise of hope for you and me. And though the clouds hang heavy and the sun we cannot see, we know above the dark clouds that fill the stormy sky, hope's rainbow will come shining through when the clouds have drifted by. Teresa Caprio is the president and founder of Rainbow Guardian Inc., a nonprofit 501c3 serving the intellectually challenged/developmentally disabled, including autism. Teresa started the foundation in 1995 so she could help make a better life for her intellectually challenged daughter. Her dream is that the Rainbow Guardian will provide the necessary tools and education to help the public understand the special needs population, because it's often discarded in mainstream society. To find out more or make a donation in support, please go to www.rainbowguardian.org. Rainbow Guardian's special mission is to see these unique people live a happy, full life and have a future of liberty and equality.
Welcome back. So if you're just joining me, I have author, speaker, podcast host, and creator of a dating site, Mark Bradford, on, and we're talking about his dating site before we went to the break. So, Mark, let's just go right into it. So, tell us about the dating site, how it works, the name of it, and all the juicy stuff.
All right. Here's the scoop. Here's the juicy stuff. So
Okay.
after doing research, I found that we basically make a decision in about 7 seconds, whether we like someone or not. And it goes from there. And, regardless of what everyone says, oh, they're good inside this and this and this, we have the ability within us, whether it's due to nurture, nature, spirituality, evolution, what have you, the ability to sort of sweep an entire room and go, I like that person looks interesting, and that's it. And so because it's based on that, I called the site Only a Glance, because it really takes only a glance. And so I realized that in life, if you're standing in line at a Starbucks, you don't know what someone's religion is or what their net worth is or how many kids they have and all that stuff. You basically need to make that first connection. So like all the dating sites, you picture of another person and you click on the picture, and now you wait to see if that person clicks on you. If they click on you, just like in line, if they say, well, hello, how are you today? Then you get to see about 7 stats of them. You do get to see how tall they are, because in real life you'd see that. You see whether they're a smoker, you see whether they have kids or not, just small talk stuff. And if the two of you want to continue, you both say, hey, I'd like to continue chatting. And if not, then you just disconnect from there. So it follows logical steps of safety that we have in real life when we meet someone. The thing that makes it unique is that I only allow, or the site only allows 3 outgoing connections, meaning you can only connect with 3 people at a time. You can't connect with like 50 people, because in real life, I assume, altruistically, you really want to meet someone that you want a fairly serious relationship with. So if you find that 4th person and you're like, oh man, I really like her, you have to let go of one of the other connections. And the connections even have a little timer on it that shows if something's getting stale, because on dating sites a lot, you connect with someone that just sits there, because I'm dating. So, and I hate to say that, but it's true. The power dynamic is completely messed up, because men are hunter-gatherers. All they want to do is get rid of whatever between them and the thing that they want. So if a man wants to meet an attractive, interesting woman, and you say, oh, you have to swipe, well, then they'll swipe on everyone. And I actually said this in my very first book. I said, men will literally swipe on everyone. And I was literally sitting next to a guy in a bar once, and he started talking to me, and he pulls out his phone, and without even looking at his phone, he swipes right on every single picture that comes up, because he needs to swipe right to connect with the women. And once they connect with him, then he'll sort it out. And so doing it. And because of that power dynamic, all the women have a false sense of choice. They think, oh, 87 guys like me. No, they don't, unfortunately. And of those 87 guys, only like a small percentage of them actually looked at your picture and like you. And of that small percentage, only some of them are wanting to connect to you for the right reason. And out of that small percentage, only a few are the men that you're actually attracted to. So it's just so much work created.
That's interesting. Is it first? You said 7 seconds. So is that just by looks? Is that the first thing? Is that what we go by?
Well, so the spark that we have is based on looks, but more, because our brain can process a lot more than just how someone looks. It's how the person moves. It's sort of the kind of like the impression we get, how they dress, all that stuff. I mean, you could literally write a book on what you just saw in a couple seconds, because you're like, well, I think this person is fairly well-to-do because they're wearing this. This woman has a certain grace to her because she's wearing heels, but she's not stumbling on it. This person looks haggard, so she's cute, but she's haggard, so she's probably got little kids that she's dealing with, and da-da-da-da-da. There's all this stuff that we just sort of, we get. And, everyone has their own thing or multiple things, which is where the status game concept came from. And, one of the most common things with women is height, because women usually identify height with, it reminds them of their dad, or it is something that reminds them of security, even though height does not equal security, but they typically falsely connect height with security. And there are multiple women you can talk to where they're like, I always get the a-holes. And then you look at all the men they like, and they're all tall, because she didn't choose them on personality or kindness. She chose them on height first, because that was her major gauge, which is what I call it in the status game.
And so, what does men usually do first? What's their
Well, yes. So men typically it's exuberance and youth, and I don't mean like youth, but I just mean like a woman, a woman who takes care of themselves and is colorful like a peacock kind of thing. That typically gets the attention of a man. A man doesn't want. And again, this is a broad brush I'm painting with.
right?
I'm
Of
just
course,
saying,
yeah.
yeah. So
We're
and
generalizing
there's a
here, but that doesn't apply to everybody, obviously, right? Okay.
right. So
Yeah.
yes. And which absolutely explains the whole the gold digger sugar daddy sort of concept, which gets a lot more flat. It's a perfect example of the man wanting someone younger with lots of energy, and the woman wanting someone who makes her feel secure. And wealth definitely can make someone feel secure.
Okay, because that was going to be a follow-up question, because I've heard from women who are of a certain age saying, "Oh, men only want somebody younger." So, is that true?
They want someone who has energy. And traditionally, throughout the centuries and throughout the millennia, older men and younger women typically have been paired up through the ages for various reasons. And
Right.
as the man gets older, he amasses more wealth and power, which makes him more desirable. And sometimes it's skewed quite a bit. It's weird, but I think men just typically their gut reaction is that. But I mean, the whole concept of the status game was to show that people have a lot more than that. That people want kindness. Men want kindness. They want all the things that a woman wants too. There are a lot of things that are synchronized in that way.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So if people are pairing, so if women are just looking for protection and safety and men are just looking for youth, then it makes sense that if they're not going deeper than that, why the relationships can't sustain.
Well,
Yes?
yes, and
Okay.
but I'm not suggesting that that's the way that it works. I'm just
Right.
answering your
Right, right,
fairly
right.
simple question about cool.
So, okay. So then should we, for anybody who's single, who's listening, like, and they want to join a dating site, what should they be doing and what should they not be doing?
So, okay, common things that men do on dating sites is they have like shirtless pictures, and
Right.
because they want to show the goods, because the goods sell, even though people do things that work, right?
Right. I'm just
You could
laughing because I have a friend who's on a dating site and she screenshots these pictures and she's like, "Look at this
yeah,
guy. Oh my God." And we just laugh. So
yeah.
it's just funny that you said
Well,
that. But go ahead. Yeah, go
right.
ahead.
And then men will also show a picture of them holding a dead animal, holding a fish or holding a deer that they killed. They'll show a picture
Yeah.
of them with their snowmobile or their car or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll typically show pictures with sunglasses on because they think that's cool. Women
Okay.
women travel in packs. Women travel in
Uh-huh.
groups. So women will
Sure.
always have a picture of them and 73 women, and they have their leg holded up, one of them, and they're all laughing and having a great time at their girls' night out and stuff like that. And you're like, where's Waldo? Which one of you are? Which one is you? And you'll scroll
Right.
through 7 pictures, and there's 57 women in the next picture. Women will take a perfectly nice looking picture and they'll tilt the camera down into their boobs and they'll be like, okay. And you're like, okay, that's really nice, but that's not for like the very first picture, because you wouldn't do that at a Starbucks and say, hello, baby.
Right. No, of course. Right.
And women will also filter the crap out of their pictures. They'll filter it. They'll filter it. I even saw a profile where all the pictures were filtered, but they were the Snapchat filters where she had the ears and the tongue of like the dog, and I'm like, really?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so people need to see what you really look like, and I've done before and afters, and I did the same thing with screenshotting to friends, and I'm like, this is what you really looks like, and these are the 4 filtered pictures. Oh my goodness. So so women will do that. Women typically, more often than not, will tell you what they don't want, but you shouldn't waste valuable real estate and reading time saying what you don't want. You should say what you do want. You should also. Oh, okay.
No.
You
Go ahead. I was saying
make,
that's a good point. That's a good point. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you also shouldn't make the person pay for the sins of the predecessors. You shouldn't say, here's all the things that made me angry with all the men I've dated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, I'm sorry you were hurt. Everyone was hurt, but that's not going to work. It's kind of like putting up a sign that says, stealing is wrong. Oh, nobody steals anymore. It doesn't work that way. So
Right.
Don't do that. Just basically bullet list it, and it's hard because you're kind of selling yourself, right? And nobody likes doing
Right.
that. But you kind of say, this is what I'd like. And this, honestly, just to be real, is I like to do this sort of thing. And I like to hang out. And here's my little hobby. Everyone wants someone probably with a personality. I certainly want that.
Of course.
I will see. I want someone who has hopes and dreams and aspirations, but also has blonde moments. I think that's adorable. So I like that sort of thing. So I also wouldn't give too much away on the profile. People don't need to know your life story. If you have children and they're the center of your world, wow, my mind is blown. I could have never figured that out on my own. So, sorry, that was sarcasm. If you have kids, everyone knows that the kids are most important. You don't have to keep saying that. A weird trend I've noticed is that women with large dogs will have these pictures as if the dog is their boyfriend. And it's the oddest thing. It's like you literally don't want to break them up like they're a couple. Like you're like, okay, well, you look like you're good. Like it's so funny.
Okay.
And I see that a lot too. So I'd say that's pretty much it. I mean, if all your pictures are at a bar with other people, well, then we kind of get that that's what you like to do and that's all you do. It would be kind of nice to see you knitting or, I don't know, talking to other human beings where you're not shouting. I don't know. So we just want to see some variety. But again, it's a dating site and it's programmed and created to keep you on your toes and keep you wanting to connect to people, but not allowing you, essentially. And it's going to pop something up that says, hey, did you want to see who likes you? That'll be $3.99. Did you want to do this? You can boost yourself.
Right.
That's another $16.
Right.
And it's just a way to suck all the money out of your wallet.
Okay, that makes sense. So this is really good advice. So people listening on a dating site. So men, put your shirt on. Women, don't over filter. And for both, say exactly what you are looking for in a relationship instead of what you don't want. Right? And what about, they always ask you these creative taglines, and people try to be really creative and witty. Do you have any recommendations about that?
You broke up a little bit, but I think you're asking about the witty taglines and all that stuff?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that actually goes back to Only a Glance. I got rid of usernames for the exact reason, where it just shows the first name of the person, because we don't walk around with a T-shirt that says, Volleyball Babe 765 on it. We don't. Right. We just want to get to know the person. All that stuff is just to increase interactivity and increase time that people are spending on the site, because the longer you spend on the site, the more likely you're going to see an ad and generate ad revenue. So that's why they also lie and show that you're online when you're not online. I think it's one of the most disingenuous things. And so it'll show you're online because you checked your dating site from your phone and then put it away in your purse. And now you're going to stay online for an hour. And then when the dude sees you're online and you haven't written back to him, he's going to send you an angry message to say, I saw you were online for an hour, but you saw my message. So they do that so that you think you're going to interact. But if you know who's online, you'll be less likely to interact. So it's a vicious circle.
That's interesting. Did not know that. That's really interesting that they do that. And what should you do? Okay, so this is common in dating sites that I've heard. People will think they make a connection and then the person disappears. So
the ghosting, right?
The ghosting. Yeah. So what do you recommend about why do people ghost so easily, and what do you recommend people do about that?
So everything's a matter of perspective, right?
Okay.
People will say, I can't find anyone. This is related to what you said. People will say, I can't find anyone, and what they really mean to say is, I can't find anyone that I like. They'll have 5 people who like them, but they don't like them, so they don't even count those people. Under that same sort of mentality, when someone isn't interested in another person, if they write to them and say, hey, things are cool, I really appreciated meeting you, but I don't think we're a match, all of a sudden, sometimes they get, well, why not? Well, what could I have done differently? Why are you
I
being so
see.
harsh? Why doesn't anyone like me? Here's my whole life story. So, of course, what's the natural reaction is to go away from the pain and to say, I'm just not going to write to them because I don't want to deal with like that. I'll just block them and then I won't, I'm done. And so that's why people ghost other people, because they've been burned over and over again, or there's a certain level of immaturity. For the most part, we can give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's not immaturity, it's they keep getting burned. That happened to me a lot. I was very altruistic. I would tell every single person that I appreciated meeting them, but I'm not interested. And oh my God, I got some really nasty responses back.
Yeah, I would prefer somebody to say that to me than ghost me personally. But
Same here.
yeah, I would just feel that would give me, it's being more respectful, in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. I'm not a ghoster, so I wouldn't want to be ghosted. But on that note, let's take a break here because I want to talk about the game and how that plays in your book, The Status Game. Stay tuned.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes. Co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Hi, I'm Melisa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on OMTimes Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind,
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. So, Mark, your site is called Only a Glance. Is that correct? Or
yeah,
at a
that's
Only
correct.
A Glance, and it's free.
It is completely free, but right now it's closed because I'm retooling it. I'm not sure how to relaunch it. So yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys are going to have to stay tuned. But I'm sure, Mark, when you are relaunching it, you're going to put it on your website that people can find a link to it if they want to join it.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So your book, The Status Game, your book was inspired by your dating experiences?
It was, and it was more than dating because I realized that all relationships are based on one thing, whether it's you and your spouse or your boss or your client or your daughter or your son or your father. It's all based on one thing. And so the concept of the status game, and I'm releasing the status game 3 very soon.
Okay.
And that includes a 100-page workbook. So
great.
the concept of the status game is that all relationships are based on status. And what I mean by status is not just, oh, you're the emperor of the moon. Wow, I'd really like to date you. It's not just social status, but imagine that you have a dashboard in front of you like a car. A car is a dashboard with very important things it's trying to tell you at all times. The largest gauge is the most important. It's the speed, the one that's going to kill you. And then it gets smaller into like the amount of gas you have and so on and so forth. We have an invisible dashboard in front of us that shows us the same thing for the people we're attracted to. The larger the gauge, the more important it is. If you're really attracted to men who make you feel like they're kind and nurturing, well, then you'll have a kindness and nurturing gauge that's really big. And then if height's important, you'll have a height gauge, and then you may have another gauge for wealth or somebody who physically takes good care of themselves and so on and so forth. Someone else may have one for energy, or someone who's flexible, and someone who's just really good with kids and so on and so forth. So that's what the status game is based on, is that we have these dashboards in front of us, and we actually have three. We have one for the people that we're going to have a non-platonic relationship with. We have one for our friends, and we have one for ourselves. And the one for ourselves shows us why we might stay at a job that we hate, because we may have a really big gauge that has to do with prestige. Oh, I work at a law firm. They treat me like crap, but I work at a law firm, so that's why I stay. And so you may have a big gauge for that and so forth. And those gauges will always guide you through life to those things that you keep doing and the people that you keep having in your life. The gauges will just basically show you that. And that's actually what the Status Game 3 does. It literally allows you to see what your dashboards are.
Okay, now how does that work in the game? So, because you have a game about, and you say,
Yes,
it's really fun and all this stuff. So how do we play the game, the Status Game?
So the Status game, I couldn't build all of that into a game. I just had to have it something fun. So basically what I did was I came up with a card game, which basically it's for the simple goal of the game is to date someone else in the game, one of the other players, and then to ask them to marry you. And so if you, and the cards allow you to build up your status. So there are cards that give you status, and there are cards that subtract your status. And so as I break open a deck, there'll be one that says, a good job, but then there's also a minus that says workaholic. There is one that'll be unsufferable. That'll be a minus. Somebody who's into sports would be a plus because they're usually physically fit. There are cards like high maintenance, which modifies the attractive card. There are cards that you put down on the table so that people can see. One of them's height. One of them's attractive. There are negative cards like addiction to something, or you eat a special diet, or so forth. There is a retail therapy card, which I love. I always send that to my friends when I feel like retail therapy. And so basically, if I ask you to marry me and your status is higher than me, because we count up the cards because they have the numbers on them, then I just won. If I ask you to marry me and my status is higher than you, then you just won. And that's basically the premise of the game.
It sounds like it'd be a fun game to play at a party, though, especially if there's a lot of single people at the party. If you have a lot of people, it sounds like a lot of fun, that you could have a lot of fun with that game.
Well, a quick anecdote is that while I was testing this, I would take it to like meetups and things, local meetups. And I remember playing with this big group of people, and the gender of the person doesn't really matter. So there was this little guy who was playing, and then he was dating this really big guy, right? And one of the cards that you can pass to someone else is it's flirting, and then the other one is harmless communication, but they look the same when you pass the card. So, and you want to get rid of cards in your hand, because if you have too many cards, it's just like real life where you're too busy and you don't have time to date. So I remember him passing the card to someone else, and this really big guy who, nobody really knew each other. He looked at the guy like really angry, and everyone kind of like froze. And I said to him, "You look like you're jealous." He said, "I was." He didn't even know the other guy, and the card game had literally made him angry. Like, how dare you cheat on me? It was so funny.
Right. Yeah. People get very possessive of their mates, right? So I know you've had some really interesting dating stories. Can you share some? Because usually people
Yeah.
they'll share their most like unbelievable and I have to say terrible dating stories, unfortunately. But you can share whatever terrible ones, wonderful ones, people who have met each other, anything you want to share about your most stunning dating stories you've ever heard.
I'll share one quickly, and that's my "What are you doing, Julie?" That's my "What are you doing, Julie?" story. And so,
okay.
I had as you're dating people, you develop rules, just like in real life in anything else. You develop a rule because something keeps burning you. Like, I'm not doing that again. I have a rule against it. Well, one of my rules now is you need to be truly divorced, and you need to have been alone for a year so that you could find out who you are. You knew who you were in the relationship, but now you need to find out who you are so that new person goes forward. And so many people jump from one relationship to another, and sometimes they overlap them, which is not a healthy thing.
Yes,
so
I agree.
Before I made this rule, I connected to someone on, I don't know, OkCupid or something like that. And she said that she was, just about divorced other than the paperwork thing. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, I joked to her. I said, as long as your husband doesn't show up and take a shotgun and say, get away from my wife. And she's like, oh no, we have a very amicable relationship. And so we met at a park to take a walk because you get so tired of coffee and things like that. And, I gave her a hug when she got out of the car. And just before we took the walk, a pickup truck pulled up. And it just sat there, and the window rolls down, and the guy takes his phone out and he just starts filming in our general direction. And me being, the timid, non-outgoing person, I yelled to him and I said, hey, that guy's filming us. And she just looked at me nonplussed and she said, yeah, that's my husband.
Oh my God.
And I looked at her, and that word just sounded so dirty to me. It made me feel bad. And I was like, wait, your husband? And she said, well, I told you I was married. And I was just like, ew. I wanted to go take a shower. I was like, I'm going to be on an episode of Cheaters. And I literally joked with her. I'm like, am I going to be on an episode of Cheaters? She walks over to his truck, and the window goes up and down because he's unsure if he should interact with her or not. And I felt bad because the guy looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. And and you don't know. And so he said, hey, are you, insert name here, are you William Ferguson? And I'm like, no. He's like, are you Dan from work? So I'm like, no. And he says, did you meet her on a dating site? And I'm like, yes, I did. And he said, what's your name? I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not telling you that. So she basically said, well, I should just go talk to him. And I said, well, you know what? This concludes our business. I got in my car and I just drove away.
Wow. Yeah, that would be pretty. Yeah, I would be so embarrassed. I wouldn't want to be in that situation. Okay, no. So with dating, is there one thing that you could tell everybody that they should not do? I know a lot of people lie on their dating profile. Is that a big profile? Is that a big no-no? What should people really just not do? Or, people be like, oh, I'll just take off a little bit of the height, or just I'm gonna make myself a few years younger. And I'm thinking, well, what happens when you really like this person? You have to tell them you lied. I mean, that's totally crazy, to me.
Well, exactly. People are eventually going to meet you. You can't show a picture that's 20 years old and hide behind a pillar in the restaurant the entire time. You have to eventually be seen. I would just say, don't lie. I mean, be as truthful as you can, but don't give your deepest, darkest secrets. The lying thing just is never going to pay off. It just isn't, because it starts you off on the wrong foot. And I just be sincere. I would quote Shakespeare and, to thine own self be true. And that is true, is that if you have to be honest with yourself before you can be honest with other people. So I would just do that. And don't beat yourself up for wanting a certain thing. If you really like guys that are a certain this, that, or the other thing, and if it seems weird, well, maybe explore it a little bit and go, I wonder why I like that. But otherwise, don't beat yourself up for what you like, because you don't want to go through life going, I really wanted this, but I don't know if I deserve that. So just don't beat yourself up.
Okay. And then one last question about dating, and then I want to touch a little bit on your fiction book and your podcast.
Cool.
How do men feel about women who have sex on the first date, because I know how women feel about it, and I'm making no judgments either way.
Oh, I assume you mean how do men feel about women?
Like sometimes they'll tell you don't sleep with them on the first date. Yeah, so it's like, how do men really feel about that? Do they care at today's age? And is it even something that's thought about, or what do men think about that?
Speaking for 85 million men. No, I can.
I mean, this is a general.
Really,
we're always speaking generals, just because you had a dating app and you talk to people and stuff. So
of course,
I'm just curious.
Of course. Mm-hmm. I would assume that based on what I see and read and people I talk to, men are not a big fan of that at all. They're far less a fan of that than we're led to believe by the media and so forth. Yeah, because they're smart enough to know that if you do that with them, you'll do that with other people. It's like everyone wants to feel special. Mm-hmm. And you can't feel special if that's on the table right away.
Got it. I suspected that, so thank you for that confirmation. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your podcast. And your podcast is on Sundays, right? You record you have it on Sundays. And do you like to have guests? So what's your podcast about?
So the podcast is called Alchemy for Life, and it's based on the whole concept that life is made of three things: time, energy, and resources. And we spend that on 5 facets of life, and that's where the whole coaching thing came from too. So in about 10 minutes, because I value people's time, in about 10 minutes, I try to give them some sort of interesting, either a tip, a way to get more time, energy, and resources out of life, or a weird thought experiment. Like, you have Postcards to the Universe. I sort of had sending yourself a message back in time, literally you put a note under your pillow and you wake up the next day and you find it, kind of thing. So I had little things like that. I also have hour-long shows in which I interview people from all over the world. In fact, I was one of the last people that John McAfee talked to before his untimely death, and it was very fascinating. It was a fascinating show. It was so interesting. So, I reach out to people that I just find interesting and fascinating, and sometimes there's a miracle, and they respond to me, and I get them on the show.
Yeah, no, that's great. And people can find your shows on all the podcasting platforms. What's the title of the show?
Yeah, iTunes and all that stuff. Absolutely.
And the title Alchemy of the show again? Alchemy for Life. Okay.
Alchemy for Life. And if you go to alchemy4.life, that's there. Everything you can find is what you said in the beginning, which is at markbradford.org. That's sort of the hub for everything, including my fiction and all that stuff.
Good segue. So what is your fiction book about? Share a little bit about that. Because I wanted to ask that question too before we had to wrap up.
Absolutely. And I'll try to be brief again. So I wrote what turned out to be an epic hero's journey, coming of age, set 1,000 years in the future. It's sort of a post-dystopian book. It's about a grieving father who wants to take one last job as an assassin, and he does. He takes it so that he can be left alone and get a gazillion, lots of money so that he can be left alone. But it actually changes him and the entire world forever. And the genesis of the book was that I literally took a walk in the cemetery after writing all these nonfictions, and I heard voices. And it's not the voices from the dead, but it was a beautiful conversation between two people, and I knew they were the main characters, and I knew it was the end of the book. And I thought, oh my God, I wish this movie existed. This sounds so cool. And I thought, oh my God, I probably have to write this. And so I kept walking, and I started to create a poem in my head. It was like a medieval sing-songy poem. And I went, okay, I'm done walking. I ran home, sat down, wrote this poem, literally one shot, wrote the poem, no edits, no nothing, and went, okay, I just wrote the outline of a book. Mm-hmm. And so I went ahead and I said, okay, I guess I'm writing this book. And I wrote this epic hero's journey. And I finished the book, and it's a good end, but I was like, I'm only halfway through a poem. I need to write the sequel. And so I wrote the sequel, and then because it's 1,000 years in the future, I ended up writing the prequel explaining everything that happened.
It's 3 books? This series is 3
yes,
books?
3 books.
3 books. And what's the title? What is it?
It's called The Sword and the Sunflower, and it's actually not only in paperback and hardcover and all that other stuff, but it's also an audiobook. I did end up recording the audiobook for it as well. The sequel to it is called Amira, and then the prequel is called Upside Down. And I actually ended up winning the audiobook reviewer.com's award for new artist.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. And if you guys want to find out more about Mark, you can go to markbradford.org, and all of his information is on there. Thanks so much for being with me today.
Oh, thank you.
Guys, thank you guys for listening to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. And I'm wishing everyone a wonderful week with joy and love. And God bless Florida. We need it right now. Peace.